guys. My name is Nick Emmons. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Upshot, and we're building tools for pricing NFTs more efficiently in order to help build out this intersection of DeFi and NFTs. Over the past year and a half, 2 years, DeFi and NFTs have exploded, and they've become these sort of two core pillars of the crypto application space. DeFi gives us this permissionless, composable set of tools in which we can build highly expressive financial instruments in a decentralized setting. But the issue is we're limited to a fairly finite set of assets in building those instruments. And NFTs, on the other hand, are a structural innovation. They quite literally allow us to represent anything on chain in the same setting that these composable tool sets live. The issue here is that they're highly illiquid, they're difficult to price, and so having them interact with this financial system that we're building is quite difficult and impossible in some cases. So these two pillars have exploded in silos, in separation. What we're trying to do is to bridge these things and unlock the massive amounts of value that can exist at the intersection of DeFi and NFTs. And a lot of why they are siloed is because of this NFT liquidity problem. NFTs fundamentally are low velocity, non-fungible assets. They don't change hands very often. And this means that these open market transactions, these transfers of ownership that act as price discovery events for more fungible or liquid assets, just don't happen frequently enough for NFTs for that to be used as the sole means of pricing them. So when you look to the real world, to see similar types of assets, you see real estate, you see physical art being supplemented heavily by the use of appraisals, the querying of experts' opinions around the values of these assets. And so that's what we're trying to build here to help bridge the gap between DeFi and NFTs. And appraisals are useful because they don't come with the prerequisite of an asset changing hands. When we're buying NFTs, when we're buying real estate, when we're buying physical art, we're holding these assets for long periods of time, but they need to be able to be repriced regularly and accurately in order for them to kind of fit into the DeFi mold that we'd like them to fit into and build these new exotic financial instruments. So how do NFT appraisals work? This is going to be a very high-level overview of NFT appraisals. There's a lot more information on our blog, and there's a lot more kind of ways you can appraise NFTs, but we'll just give a high-level overview. First, before we get into that, there are kind of two ways to appraise NFTs. On one hand, there are human appraisals. There's some experiments being done here. We did a lot of early experiments with this over the past year as well. And human appraisals are essentially asking experts to manually weigh in on the value of these assets, go through a UI or some product, and appraise each NFT specifically. And this runs into some headwinds in terms of scalability and accuracy. On the scalability front, manually appraising one NFT at a time imposes a fairly low ceiling on the number of NFTs that can be appraised in any reasonable number of times. So repricing these NFTs frequently becomes very difficult, often impossible at scale. And accuracy becomes an issue because when building systems for human appraisers to elicit their beliefs around the values of these assets, you have to take into account a fairly limited cognitive bandwidth. You have to ask highly approximative questions to these experts. Is this NFT more valuable than this NFT? Or given this NFT in these price ranges, which price range does it fall within? So you're asking multiple rounds of questions just to reach a reasonably granular estimate of the value of that NFT, further eating into the scalability, further eating at the frequency in which you can reprice these assets, and quickly kind of deteriorating the benefits of appraisals in the first place. So that's human appraisals. On the other end, there are kind of model-driven approaches, machine learning models, other kind of statistical models to pricing appraisals, and this is kind of the world we're living in right now. And the benefit of this is that machine learning models can price many NFTs with high levels of accuracy and reprice these things very, very frequently. And so we'll go into like what goes into these models and some of the things that are considered when pricing NFTs sort of artificially this way. So primarily, the things that go into these models when pricing NFTs or appraising NFTs is first the metadata, the traits, the rarity, things like this, what the NFT is. The sort of hard market interactions, sales, mints, these kind of transfers of ownerships that occur in the open market, and I think softer market interactions, things like bids, ask, what the order books for these NFTs look like. And then the secondary considerations that go into these models that we're not really going to touch on in this presentation are things like social sentiment analysis. How are people talking about these NFTs? What's the general sentiment across social networks for these things? Twitter, Discord engagement. How big are these communities? How fast are they growing? How engaged are they? Things like this. And sprinkling in a little bit of sort of crowd intelligence, this manual expert touch done in small doses can actually improve considerably the results of these sort of model-driven pricing approaches. So what we'll do now is we'll go through a quick example of a flow of what goes into pricing these things. Again, this is very high level. This is not everything that goes into it, but it should give a decent idea on how we're able to price NFTs without needing them to transact on the open market and do it so efficiently that we're able to reprice them at a kind of high speeds. So let's take this DICBUT, 4835. First, what we're going to do is we're going to take the traits from the contract. We're going to take the metadata that has been defined directly for this DICBUT. This DICBUT has three traits, three kind of populated traits. Its background is a sunset, its eyes are googly, and its skin is light. Now, if we just went off these three traits, we'd be only capturing part of the picture of what actually goes into influencing this price. Primarily, what we look for in DICBUTs and other types of NFTs is how clean it is versus how kind of messy or sloppy it is. And so what you have to do is you have to start identifying these meta traits that you can define on top of the metadata that is existent in the contract itself. And so the meta trait that is kind of most useful for DICBUTs and most other NFTs is the number of traits, because this will allow us to nail down how clean something is or things like this. Other meta traits may be specific combinations of traits. Hoodies and sunglasses might be a meta trait in itself, because that combination will influence the price positively more than just a hoodie or just sunglasses, things like that. And so now that we've defined our sort of full set of traits, we can start to do in-depth analysis around trait-specific interactions on the open market. We can examine trait-specific sales, so not just tied to that DICBUT, but tied to all googly-eyed DICBUTs, or all googly-eyed three-trait DICBUTs, or all combinations of those traits. We'll do the same with order books, bids, asks, assess order book composition at a kind of a trait level. We can do things like look at how the rarest trait in different NFTs or different DICBUTs is performing, and use that to influence our prices. Use rarity score or last sale price across a collection to gain kind of collection-wide sentiment. There's a bunch of other features that can go into it. This is just a small set of what goes into it, but it's to give an idea of the sort of information that's going into these models. And then what we can do is we can grade these models fairly objectively. What we do is we can assess the sales history of the NFTs against our our timeline of prices that we've produced for these assets, these appraised prices, and then we can produce a sort of median relative error for the comparison of actual sales to predicted prices. And what this median relative error is, given this price, we're able to predict the next sale price with an X% level of accuracy. So if that DICBUT was predicted to be worth 2 ETH with 12.75% MRE, the real price is actually 2 ETH plus or minus 12.75%. And now what we have are these absolute prices that are being produced at high frequencies with known error bounds that we can then begin to build different financial infrastructure on top of. And that's what we get at the end of this. We get real-time price feeds for NFTs. And I think the real magic in this is seen when you look at an asset that has never changed hands or hasn't changed hands in a long period of time. Like this doodle hasn't changed hands in about 4 months. It was last sold at 1.19 ETH, but because of how we're modeling the NFTs in this collection, how we're pricing NFTs using these approaches, we're actually able to have an appraisal that is updated hourly. So we have a price feed that is updated on an hourly cadence and can be used across a number of financial applications. And these are just some quick stats around how we're appraising NFTs. Right now we're supporting over 240 collections. We're appraising over 270,000 NFTs across those collections, and we're repricing those NFTs every hour. So we're producing these close to real-time price feeds for NFTs with an average MRE of around 8 to 15%, which is industry leading right now. So, and then I'm just going to go into quickly kind of what this enables. These are just a few examples. There's a number of kind of exotic DeFi x NFT primitives that real-time price feeds and NFT appraisals enable, but we'll just go into 3 really quickly. So the first one is efficient NFT lending protocols. The sort of de facto way to build out NFT lending protocols right now, there's been a number of experiments in the space, is via this pawn shop model. This involves back and forth between two parties. It runs into similar price discovery inefficiencies and a number of other kind of suboptimalities. So what you can do when you have these real-time price feeds powered by appraisals, you can build a system that looks similar to MakerDAO. I can now deposit an NFT that I have into essentially a vault or a CDP and point to a price feed for that NFT itself. It'll update every hour, and that will track whether this position needs to be liquidated, whether it's over-collateralized or not, things like this. And then I can draw debt against that position, similar to how I would draw debt against a CDP or a vault. And now I have taken out leverage to buy more dick butts. Maybe I've taken out debt to purchase a home or something in the real world. I've just created value from my previously stagnant asset. NFTs in general right now are very stagnant reservoirs of capital, and they're very large reservoirs of stagnant capital. We can't actually do many productive things with that, and so we're losing a ton of money, because that money is just being left on the table and not being able to earn yield on it, not being able to kind of take out debt from it, and building these efficient lending protocols and other kind of DeFi NFT primitives will enable us to make that capital, make that pool of capital productive. And then when I'm ready to pay off my debt, I can just recapitalize the position, pull out my NFT, assuming it hasn't been under collateralized. I've now made my dick butt productive in a capital sense. Another example of what you can build with these sorts of things are semi-autonomous NFT investment DAOs. So right now, NFT investment DAOs are run through very discretionary governance practices. It's based on human interaction, decentralized governments, kind of social choice theory. But what we can do instead is we can say, here are the parameters in which our investment DAO wants to operate in. We want to have this allocation of this type of asset or this collection, and then we can just let the models handle the rest. The models can assess orders as they're going onto the open market, onto these open order books, and purchase or sell NFTs based on whether it's a good deal to do so as determined by these models. I think this is going to open up a whole design space of how we can think about DAOs and we can think about investment DAOs in this actually autonomous sense, and will really expand the kind of level of exposure that many people outside of the NFT space can soon get to the NFT market. And then the last one, which is most exciting in my eyes, is NFT synthetics. Synthetic assets are just assets that give you exposure to some other asset or some other price feed. And all that's needed to create a synthetic asset is some arbitrary pool of capital and some reliable price feed. So now I can put together essentially a Pinterest board of NFTs. I could put together a Pinterest board of dick butts, for example, point to the price feeds for those specific NFTs, back those price feeds with capital, and now I can pull out a token or an asset that is tracking the market movements or the price movements of those things as determined by these appraisals without needing to hold any of them myself, without them needing to be locked in any specific place. I can now take theoretically arbitrarily deep positions in these things and use these synthetic representations of these assets to build a number of DeFi primitives themselves. They become fungible representations of previously non-fungible assets. And so these are just some of the examples of the kind of DeFi x NFT primitives that you can build when you have NFT price feeds that are not reliant on these transfers of ownership for NFTs. NFT appraisals will sort of open up the intersection of DeFi and NFTs. And all this is exposed through a pretty easy to integrate REST API and soon some adapters to bring them into the DeFi space. So if you'd like to integrate any of this, if you'd like to build any interesting experiments at this intersection, check out our website. Our developer docs are pretty easy to consume, and just reach out if you have any questions. So thanks.